Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Now, does stepping into the unknown, starting something new, letting go of something that does not serve you, or simply sitting with uncertainty somehow feel unsafe? Well, if you can relate to this week's teaching will show you how to gently dismantle your fear of the unknown using inner child reparenting and Wu Wei wisdom therapy techniques. Okay, David, so this fear of the unknown, what is it? What is going on here?
This is really important because I think this is one of the most important and blocking agents that the inner child gives us. And it's one of the biggest misunderstandings because it keeps it on to the carousel of despair. It keeps it into the familiar when all along we live in the unknown. So it's a complete misunderstanding that the inner child has. Now, you could call it wanting to be future-proofed or to be in control. But this is the inner child trying to take control. And it's trying to take control what it can't control. And this is the number one thing that causes the red light feelings that people call anxiety. This is the number one thing because you cannot control the unknown because we live in the unknown.
And so just for new listeners, the inner child in our therapy model is that part of our mind, our psyche, our ego, which holds on to beliefs and ideas about ourselves and the world around us that were typically formed when we were younger children.
Yes, and it has a mantra that I like to repeat, and it's like a child. And if you have children, you'll know what I mean. The inner child wants what it wants when it wants it. Now, the problem comes, in reality, it can't get that. And so there's a constant battle against what that part of your psyche would really like and what it can achieve. And so it keeps with what it knows, and this is what people find so hard to understand. It will keep with what it knows, even if it's unsuccessful. It will stay in the familiar rather than stepping out into making changes into something that it would call the unknown. So it will stay on the same path. And we call that the carousel of despair, going round and around. And if you've ever heard yourself say, why do I keep doing the same thing? This is the reason why. And this is why this teaching is so important, vital for you to understand.
So what you're saying is this part of our thinking keeps us stuck with familiar routines, familiar stories, familiar ways of doing things, because it perceives that safety is found in the familiar. And it perceives that doing something that we don't know, that we haven't tried before, that is something different, is fundamentally unsafe. So that's the logic. So as far as the inner child part of our mind is concerned, it's like, it's a no-brainer. I stick with what I've got, even though it's not great, because it's better than potentially stepping out.
And we have a saying for that, don't we? Better the devil you know. So the inner child will definitely work on better the devil you know, even if it doesn't work. And many of my clients will say this to me, well, how do I change this? As you listen to it, how do I change this? And the question is not how do I change it? Why do you want to keep it? And that opens the door. So if you ever said, oh, I wish I could change this, or how do I change this? Or they'll say to me, David, tell me how to change this. The question is not that. The question is, why do you want to keep it? And then they'll say something like, well, it's familiar, or it's ingrained, or it's a habit, or it's something that I've done all my life. It's my nature. And all of those are the voice of the inner child keeping you on the carousel. Because as you just said, it perceives that as being safe is more important than being going round and around, because it can kind of deal, even though it doesn't like it, the discomfort. It kind of knows the discomfort. It doesn't know what lies when it opens the door of the unknown. But again, here's the problem. We live in the unknown. That is our home. Nobody knows the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And so it's constantly having an internal battle with yourself.
So, David, what I've heard you say there is that inner child's belief that the unknown is unsafe is a big driver here for keeping us stuck. What about the common inner child belief that many of us hold on to, which is, I can't cope? Because if you say, I can't cope is one of the kind of three fundamental lies we tell ourselves, and we've done other teachings on this, but if the inner child believes that the unfamiliar and unknown is unsafe, and it also believes that if it is put in a situation where there is unfamiliarity, uncertainty, that there is no way it's going to be able to cope, that's almost like a double whammy.
It is. So this is what I'm saying. Even though it doesn't like what it's doing and it can see it's unsuccessful, in some perverse way, it believes it can cope with that. But if you offer it to say, well, let's try something new right away, it will go, whoa, and it will create even bigger emotions to put you back to what you know, because it believes in that way it has some control and it has some safety. And even though the outcome, and again, I'm going to repeat this because this is so important, even though the outcome is not what they want, it is known. And it falls into a pattern. And the pattern it normally falls into is it makes you the victim. Poor me. Look at me. It never works for me. The universe is against me. I always get treated like this. So it has the dialogue already pre-rehearsed that it can say it. And it will run that in your mind. Why do things always go wrong for me? Why does it never work out for me? Why? And it's got all of these like programmed into your mind. And then in a strange way, that's comfortable. That's normal. That's what it's used to. And then it goes round and around the carousel, creating despair. And lots of my clients have difficulty with this teaching because it will say, well, I don't like despair. I don't like it. But you know, in a perverse way, that despair becomes comfortable. It becomes known. So if you offer it the unknown, it will go, well, that could be worse. That could be even terrible. And I won't be able to cope with that. I can cope with this.
Okay, David. So what we've been talking about here is the workings of the inner child and our core beliefs and beliefs that were formed in childhood. But I guess most people who are struggling with a fear of the unknown, what they immediately notice is not the core beliefs. They immediately notice the red light emotional feelings and responses to this belief that the unknown is a bad place. So that would be anxiety, stress, hopelessness, frustration, just all manner of uncomfortable feelings. If we are to dismantle our fear of the unknown, would we start, is the starting point, when you work with your clients, the red light emotions, and then we work from there?
Yes, so that's the door that opens. The red light emotions, the ones that you just said, is the inner child crying out for your attention, crying out to try and make things the way they want it. Remember, the inner child wants what it wants when it wants it. So it wants to be pre-assured that it knows what's going to happen in the unknown. It wants guarantees. It wants certainty. Now, this is something we cannot offer the inner child. And this is where the inner child then says, well, I'll go on what I know. I'll go on what I know, because you can't guarantee me that the new path is going to be sure. So it will create the red light feelings. The red light feelings is telling you that there's something deep inside of you in your belief system that's misaligned. Now you have to follow it through in what we call the golden thread process. The golden thread process is something you can do for yourself. It's very easy. You just ask the self-inquiry question, why? Why don't you want to go into the unknown? Why don't you want to try something new? Then it will give you the answer. It will normally, and this is where the number one thing why people have difficulty in doing the golden thread, it will say, because I'm scared. But what it's done is giving you another emotion. It's not giving you the reason. And that's why many people get stuck when they're doing the golden thread. We want to know the reason. Remember, you are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. So when you say, why don't you want to go into the unknown? And it answers, because I'm scared. It's just giving you another emotion. No, what is the reason? What is the belief that you don't want to step into the unknown? Then hopefully it will say something like, because I don't know what's going to happen. And that's true. We don't know what's going to happen. And this is when we're doing the golden thread now. Because this is like you reparenting a child. How do we ever know what's going to happen in our future? We have not got that ability to be future-proofed. We do not know what's going to happen. Even staying on the carousel of despair, we do not know what's going to happen. In fact, you know this yourself, because the longer you stay on the carousel of despair, it actually keeps getting worse. It doesn't get better, it gets worse, and you get more entwined in the familiarity of going round and round on the same belief system.
So, David, there's two things you've said there. One is that when we experience those surface level red light emotions of anxiety, panic, and stress, when confronted with an unknown situation or unknown outcome or dilemma, we perceive and we deal with those emotions with curiosity rather than panic. So we don't let the emotions escalate and become our main focus of attention. So we don't just say, why am I thinking like this, or why I'm feeling this? Oh, it's because I'm scared. We don't escalate the emotions. We mindfully move on to another path of self-inquiry using that golden thread process question. Why am I experiencing these red light emotions, if that's the starting point? Because I believe that this is all going to go wrong. Yes. Why do you believe? And then you keep asking why. And then with this why questioning process, if we steer clear of answering with because of emotions, because of fear, because of anxiety, because I'm stressed, because I'm scared, and we stick to what is the thinking, what is the self-talk, what are the thoughts that are running through our mind when we consider this situation, whether it's changing jobs, whether it's a health predicament, whether it's a relationship predicament, where there is uncertainty or unknown involved. We dig down into the thought processes going on, and then eventually we get to the inner child core beliefs.
The three lies.
Yeah.
So when you do this, when you ask why, and you don't get diverted onto the emotion, you will go down, and then the inner child will play its trump card. It will give you one of the three lies. Because I'm not good enough, as we've talked about just. Because I can't cope. Because I'm unworthy. I'm unlovable. So that's why I can't go into the unknown. So it will give you that as like the fait accompli. Now, if you've ever said any of those three to yourself at any time, I'll repeat them. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable or I'm unworthy. This is the voice of your inner child. And what it's giving you is the answer why, to persuade you, to make you go back to what you know, because it believes that it can cope with that. It's agreeing with you, you see. It agrees with you, this isn't working, this is wrong. But it will want to stay in what it knows, because then it can become the victim and it can blame something else. Oh, men are always the same, women are always the same, bosses are always the same, everything's against me, see, because it's got this pattern of thinking that you may want to call, well, that's just a habit. It's not a habit. These are choices. It's ingrained. Oh, it's part of my nature. This is one I hear a lot. I'm just a negative person. No, that's not true. That's what you've come to believe. And that's what the inner child part of your psyche has convinced you is true to keep you on the carousel. This is far from truth. You are awesome. You are amazing. We live in the unknown. Every day, you were born into the unknown. I often use this when we're doing talks, and I think this is really powerful to me. You've never heard of a baby coming down the birth canal and kind of saying, in whatever way could, stop, hang on, before I come out, can I have some guarantees? Who's going to look after me? Who's going to feed me? Who's going to clothe me? What school am I going to go to? It doesn't do that. The baby just comes out into the universe. That's us. And it trusts, and it flows, and it becomes, my goodness, that passage of time couldn't be more coming into the unknown. Yet we do it through what I would call our Shen spirituality. There's something much deeper that drives us to move in our life. But the inner child will divert you away from what is natural, your Shen, your spirituality, and it will put you onto the carousel, which is unnatural and not correct for you.
So, David, I think that perhaps it's about, as you say, we can't say to the inner child, yes, everything will be all right. We can future-proof this. I can be sure that this is going to be the outcome. We can't do that because life is uncertain and unpredictable and out of our control largely. But we can offer the inner child reassurance that if the things that are deep down rattling it are the three lies, that I'm not going to be able to cope with this, I'm not good enough to manage this, I'm unlovable, so it's all going to end in disaster. We can deal with those fundamental drivers through reparenting, through sitting down and gently having a conversation with that part of our mind.
And that's where I really want to go to with my clients, to get down from this surface, because this surface level is just an annoyance, really, because the client and I know it's not real. So we get down to the three core lies, and then under those three core lies, we see what I call the vow, V-O-W, the vow. And the vow will always sound, and it'll be different for everyone, but the vow will sound like, there's something wrong with me. There's something missing in me. And that's the biggest lie and misunderstanding, because there's nothing missing in you, never has been. There can't be anything missing in you. But somehow the inner child has grasped onto that in their childhood to make whatever was happening in their life to make sense. And they believe it must be me. And they will come out with statements such as, I'm not worthy to be loved. See, that's very important. I'm not worthy to have a good life. I don't deserve to be happy. Because what the inner child is then doing, they're questioning their own worth and their value. And this is why all of these teachings is what I call spiritual. And this is the difference in Wu Wei wisdom. So we have techniques, but when we get to the core, it's a spiritual teaching. And let me absolutely be clear. I'm not talking about religion. I am not talking about gods. I am not talking about anything external or supernatural. I am talking about your innate, inherent spirituality. What is it that makes you? What is it that defines you? And deep down inside, when you have that confliction that you doubt yourself, and you might use different words. I don't trust myself. Have you ever said that to yourself? Think about that. Once, have you ever said, I don't trust myself? And that's a complete misunderstanding and confuses that part of your psyche. And so when it comes down to the core, when you get to the vow, and the vow says there's something missing in me, That is the fundamental separation from who you really are.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And if you want to do more work and have more understanding on this inner child reparenting, which is really essential to do this gentle dismantling process, I will put a link in the show notes to our inner child video playlist. So, David, just to finish off, what would you say to a listener now who is at the point of a major life transition or major life decision, who is struggling with all the issues we've talked about? Is there any kind of words of encouragement that you can offer?
Well, the encouragement is the truth. Always speak the truth. You are amazing. You are awesome. And that's the truth. And you've experienced that. I'm sure parents have experienced that. If you're one of your physical children who say have moved school and they've come to you in tears and saying that they're scared about moving school, they won't make friends, they're losing all their own friends, they won't be able to cope with school. And this is the same technique that you would have to use with your inner child, because we call it reparenting. You have to speak to that part of the psyche that I call the inner child, and you have to deal with these issues. So when it says something like, there's something missing in me, there's something wrong with me, I would call it inquiry. So what is missing in you, sweetheart? What do you believe is wrong with you? And then you'll see how the inner child reacts. Now it will go quiet. Now it won't be able to answer. And this is how you do, the same way as you do with your physical child. Why do you believe you wouldn't be able to cope in this new school, sweetheart? Well, because I don't know anybody, Mummy. All right, so what's the best way for us to get to know people? And you walk it through. It's almost like you hold your inner child's hand, metaphorically, in your mind. You don't force it. You don't push it. You speak to it. You don't ignore it. You don't go against it. You certainly don't let it lead you down the carousel of despair. You talk to it. I would call this a meditation. A meditation for me, being a Taoist, is focusing the mind. What we're doing now is a meditation. You're focusing, you're listening, you may be agreeing, you may be disagreeing, but that's good because now you're engaging your thought process. Is it true? Is it true that you're not good enough? I would say it can never be true. It's a complete lie. I've been doing this job for over 40 years. Not one client has given me correct evidence that they're not good enough. Is it true that you can't cope? It's a complete lie. You've always coped. In fact, you're an amazing coper. I call it you're a coping machine. How do I prove that? Well, you're here. And we all have difficulties. Everybody has difficulties and challenges in their life. And guess what? You've always coped. I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. Well, who then is judging your worth? Worth is something that's innate, that's spiritual. It's your birthright. How can somebody add worth or take worth away? And these are the conversations that when we get through the kind of the candy floss, the froth, and we get down to the core, this is the reparenting techniques that I do with my clients to question. Now, the inner child will not like this. It will resist. It will avoid. It will jump onto another subject. But you've got to get them to answer these questions because that's when you really make changes. So again, just to finish, if you've ever said to yourself, how do I change this? Flip the question and ask yourself, why do I want to keep doing this? And that's a much better question. Then you can start to go down the golden thread and speak to your inner child. Because deep inside of you is not a monster, is not something that's evil. It's not something that's against you. It's a child. And this is how I imagine it. When we're doing the golden thread, we're stepping down the steps into like a dank, cold cellar. And in the corner there is a beautiful, radiant child, huddled up and doesn't know how to move. It's scared of everything around it. And what we have to do is to walk down the steps, walk towards it, sit beside it, give it a hug, tell it that you love him, hold their hand, and then say, okay, sweetheart, we are now a team. We are now working together, and now we can go through all of these step by step, small steps, consistent steps, working out what you believe and why you believe it.
Amazing. Thank you, David. And like I say, I will put links in the show notes to teachings that will support you with this topic. Next week, David is producing a beautiful new guided meditation on exactly this topic. So if you've got value from today, please tune in for that teaching, which will be published next week. If you have enjoyed this, please do like, comment, share, and subscribe. We would really appreciate it. David works one-to-one every week with clients all over the world by Zoom video call on exactly the sorts of issues we've talked about today. I will put a link in the show notes to learn more about David's sessions if you're interested. And David also writes a free Substack blog every week with lots of beautiful new teachings and posts on there to help you on their journey. And there's a link in the show notes for that as well. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.